So yeah, tell me.
Equity at its best.
This is part one of our interview with Anne, and the question was, what are the best ways to tackle education inequity?
The most important thing to understand to get past a lot of the issues of equity in education today is like we have to get rid of white supremacy and patriarchy and these systems of oppression that one of the ways in which they operate in our world is through education. But education can also be transformative, right? Education can either, let me talk more slowly because I'm mixing up some ideas, but so education really can be done in ways that socialize us, that encourage us to be part of the status quo, to be part of how things are in society, right? So in predominantly white institutions like Penn State, there's a lot of silence among people who are white. I'm also white. Like, we're not very good about talking about race, for example. Men are usually not as good as women about talking about sexism because they don't experience it, right? Like, so I think the silence that happens in educational institutions, we can't get rid of that unless we're doing that everywhere in society. But education doesn't have to be about learning how to play the game of the status quo. Education can also be liberation, right? Like freedom, like learning the tools, learning the ideas that free our minds so we understand that there is no one leader anywhere, that we are our own leaders, right? Every person's their own leader. So like, you always are engaging in a social contract. If you go to a school and the school starts to teach you in ways that feel like they're immoral or there's something wrong, as a student, it's your responsibility to like get the tools, to get the studies, the research, the ideas, the leaders, the voices, and build the evidence and say, hey, this institution is doing this. Really, all of these people, and stop me if you want me to, I don't know, I'm referring to a lot of like critical race feminists and intersectionality. I don't know if that's too jargony or something. I spend a lot of time in academic circles and sometimes being jargony and using words that are not really words or making up words. So also interrupt me if that's helpful at any point. But critical race theory, the philosophy of critical race, feminisms, intersectionality, these are things that everybody needs to be talking about. Because like, how else do you get rid of white supremacy? When you look at the news today, and I think this matters for education, so also stop me if I'm going too far down the line, but when you look at what people are talking, I was watching the interview between Trevor Noah and
Tomi Lahren.
Yes, Tomi Lahren. And this woman, so we talk about this concept called colorblind racism and sociology, and well, many disciplines, right? Colorblind racism is like pretending you don't see race. Like everybody can see colors unless you're colorblind or are blind. I mean, there's real limitations, right? But we are human beings, and so it's very disingenuous. It's very false to pretend like you don't see other social identities. And white people do that all the time, like Tomi, whatever, yes. She's blonde, she's a white woman, and the way she's responding, you can tell she like just has not been taught the definition of racism. She doesn't understand what racism is, because she's saying all these things that like, if you understand that racism is not just about prejudice, it's also about power, right? The 5-letter word that starts with a P. Then if you're white, you understand that your whiteness connects you to white supremacy. And so if you want to not be like a jerk in the world, like you have to reflect upon that all the time. And so like Tomi like totally doesn't do that, right? She's just like saying things that logically don't make sense and that are very ahistorical. So the other thing about education, educational equity, is that if we want to have more access and all those things, those are really needed. And one of the reasons they're needed is because they help us shift the conversations in our educational institutions. Our educational institutions need to understand our own histories. But one of the biggest things that's starting to happen in universities and is really important is so many universities were directly linked to the slave trade, like benefited financially, monetarily from the selling of black and brown bodies. Like, you have to own up to that, right, and reflect on it, and that has to be part of the stories we always tell. Because if we don't tell the stories that we've had together, right, like if me and you were like 200 years ago, like what if I was a slave owner? Like it's a real possibility because I'm white. And I'm not going to get wrapped up in the fact that, so my family personally came from Italy much later, so maybe it's less likely, but I'm still white, so like I still benefit from these systems that were set up in the US by white people to oppress others. And so regardless of what my personal kind of connection is to the systems of oppression, the place in which I live shapes how I benefit from them. And we can say them, and we're better able to make those connections, to feel connections to other groups, when we understand that at the deeper level we're all connected as humans through art and culture and expression. And education can be that transformation we need in our society. 38th Street School wasn't perfect, but it was a really cool experiment. Peace Works was we had like peacemaker badges you could get, but like we had mediation rooms you would go into and learn, and hopefully today schools, I think there are a lot of smaller schools doing that, but that also needs to have, right, the missing piece there that now I can see but I couldn't see then, was that they were almost all white teachers. And